So, in the last two video clips, I introduced especially the second video clips, I introduced you three traditional Marxist international relations theory. They're traditional because, of course, all Marxist theory can agree that in the capitalist world, this is an exploitation world. The capitalists exploit proletariats. However, those traditional theories, they consider the basis of exploitation is based on some economic base. Do you still remember? I could show you this here. Traditionally, Marx divide the society into two parts. The first part is economic base, and the second part is ideological superstructure. They think that the basis of the exploitation is based on economic base. That is, those who own the so-called most advanced means of production, like in the world system theory, the core states, because of the advancement in technologies, so they can transfer it to stronger state capacity, stronger military power, and also could use to construct some laws to protect their rights. So this world system is based on the advancement of technology, of capitalist states, of core states. However, I will talk about later a special theory in Marxism called Gramscianism. This theory considers that the superstructure itself is independent. The exploitation is not totally a result of problems in economic base, but also a result of some superstructure issues. Then let me go to here. This person is Gramsci. In Chinese, it's called 格蘭西，葛蘭西或者叫。He was the leader of Italian communists in 1924, and he was put into jail by Mussolini, and then died in jail in 1937. Himself is not very influential. You can say not very influential, but we can say his political life is not very successful. His revolution failed, and then later he died in the prison. A lot of very important politicians, a lot of very important revolutionaries in the Western society in history. He's a small potato. However, he is a very, very influential Marxist theory. He himself does not construct a theory. It's later people interpret what he writes in this so-called prison notebooks. He did nothing after being repressed in 1927, and then till his death, 1937. This 11 years, he had nothing to do, but just wrote, and this in his notebook, and this is called prison notebook. This prison notebook is his own personal reflection. He mainly have to solve one question. The question is, why had it proved to be so difficult to promote revolution in Western Europe? Why is it so difficult to promote revolution in Western Europe? According to Marxist theory, revolution, the proletariat revolution, should break out in the most advanced capitalist state, like Britain, like France, like Germany. Italy is a little bit backward, but still quite advanced. However, the truth is that the first successful revolution, proletariat revolution, was accomplished in Russia in 1917. Why? Then, his big question is why? It's so difficult to promote revolution in Western Europe. He think of the idea. It's because of hegemony. Traditionally, we, particularly Marxists, they consider power is an so-called coercive practice and capabilities of the state. Power, traditionally thought about is power is someone force someone to do something. It's a coercive power. Power is an exertion of force. However, Gramsci doesn't think so. He thinks that power is a mixture of coercion and consent. He considered that if power is just based on some kind of coercion, or the fear of coercion, then it is likely for the outbreak of revolution when the state capacity declines. For instance, like in Hong Kong, if the police force suddenly do not get enough funding, then people will go to the streets and then revolt and then overthrow even the Hong Kong government. Coercion, if the coercion is successful, it leads the strength of the state, the strength of police, the strength of the state capacity, the strength of armed force. If one day the strength of the state, or we can say state apparatus, the state apparatus is declines, then the problem emerges. However, Gramsci doesn't think so. He thinks that the capitalist state, the capitalist system, can be maintained in the West not only through coercion, but through consent. That is, if the capitalist system is maintained just through coercion, then it is quite easy to be collapsed, as I mentioned. If the state suddenly lacks funding, the state police lacks funding, then people can go to the streets and overthrow the state. However, even in the West, even sometimes the state apparatus its ability declines due to, say, lack of funding, then people still don't overthrow the state. Why? Because in fact, people, even the grassroots, even those who suffer, consent, 同意 with the government. They consent that the capitalist state can exist, even though they exploit in the capitalist system. This kind of consent is based on a form of hegemony. That is 霸權, a form of hegemony. This hegemony is a composition of moral, political, and cultural values of the dominant group. And all subordinate groups and classes agree with this kind of values and accept these values. Because they accept this value, and then, of course, these political, moral, and cultural values favor the dominant class, of course. However, the subordinate class agree with those values. So they agree to be governed by the capitalist class, the capitalist group. Then, how those values are consolidated? It's consolidated by the civil society, which are the networks of institutions and practice that enjoy some autonomy from the state. This is not state imposed those values on ordinary citizens, but because of the civil society, because the state, through civil society, to indoctrinate some values to the citizens, and then citizens agree with those values, and then later they consent, and those values are all those values all together. They're called hegemony. Because they agree with this hegemony, the hegemonic values, then they agree to be governed by a state. Give you a very good example. That's a hegemony, a bourgeoisie class, a capitalist state. It has a superstructure. There are two methods for the superstructure to state to govern the society. First is through coercion, through police force, through government. And the second one is through civil society. This one is, on the one hand, force people to obey to the rule of bourgeoisie class. And then here, the second way is through civil society to transmit some values to ordinary citizens, so the ordinary citizens agree with those values. They consent to be governed. They consent to be governed. A very good example is religion. And religion is the opium of the masses. In a capitalist state, ordinary citizens suffer. However, the church tell you that, okay, if you work hard in this life, then you will get a reward from the God in the next life, in the afterlife. So there's a civil society. Civil society transmits some values, and then people accept values. Okay, even though they exploit, if they work hard, then they will get a reward in the second life. So they don't overthrow the actual capitalist system. They just work hard, keep on being suffer. Another good example is in Hong Kong. In the past, I mean, not in these few years, 10 years ago, in the past, many civil society agents, even like those kind of pro-democratic parties, pro-democracy camps, they transmit values to citizens that, okay, you should honor the one country two system, you should honor the central government. So Hong Kong people, okay, agree to honor central government. So they don't, in the past, didn't go to the streets to protest against the government or some kind of protest, but those kind of protests are very token, not very useful, not very productive. People just went to the street, demonstrate, and then after the demonstration, they clap their hands and sing a song and then say goodbye. Unlike today, there's a violent revolution. Sometimes we can say violent protest in Hong Kong nowadays. Why? Because Hong Kong people nowadays know civil societies unsuccessfully, like the media, like the political party, unsuccessfully transmit the value that we should honor the central government, we should honor the one country two system. Many people in Hong Kong consider the one country two system no longer work. So they go on the street to protest against it. And although in the past, the media, like TVB, is also is also a form of civil society. The TVB transmits some value that, okay, we should concentrate on making money and ignore politics. So in the past, Hong Kong citizens just ignore political affairs. But now, Hong Kong people no longer watch some kind of ordinary media or read ordinary newspapers. So the influence of civil society decline. And then the hegemony and also the hegemonic values no longer influence Hong Kong citizens. And so that's why Hong Kong citizens went to the street, go to the streets, go to the streets, and then protest against the government, and they even use some violent method to protest against the government. So, okay. This is so-called the historic broad, 歷史同盟. What is historic broad? In fact, it's describe a mutually reinforcing and reciprocal relationship between the socio-economic, that is the base, and political and cultural practice. So, the superstructure, unlike Marx described, is just a reflection of the base. No, the superstructure has its autonomy. It could use its superstructure to get the consent from the citizens. The superstructure, the values, the ideologies, they're very important to get the consent of citizens, of all our ordinaries, on this capitalist system. For Marx, society can only be transformed if the hegemonic position is successfully challenged. That is, as I mentioned, why in Hong Kong nowadays, people even agree, many people in Hong Kong agree with violent method of protest. In the past, no. In the past, Hong Kong people had great reservation on the use of violence. And also Hong Kong people, they don't want to provoke the central government. They think twice before going to the street because they didn't want to provoke the central government. Now, because the hegemonic system position, like the media can no longer transmit some values that, okay, Hong Kong people must honor the central government. No longer can do so. So this hegemonic position is broken. That's why, as mentioned by Gramsci, the most important struggle to challenge or even to overthrow the capitalist system is a counter-hegemonic struggle in civil society, just like Hong Kong. Why today people no longer honor the central government anymore, and use different methods, including 和理非, peaceful methods, and radical methods to change the current political system. It's because, in some sense, there's success in the struggle in civil society. Hong Kong people no longer trust, say, some traditional pan-democratic camp politicians. And also, people in Hong Kong do not trust TVB anymore. Okay, then how to apply this Gramsci's theory in international relations? A master called Robert W. Cox, he is an international relations scholar. He was an international relations scholar because he has already passed away. He was. So he taught in the University of Toronto. His famous quotation his statement is, "Theory is always for someone and for some purpose." He, in fact, consider all theories there's some purpose, and for someone is to there's some purpose. No totally objective theories. All theories is construction of all theories. For some purpose. He considered that all knowledge must reflect a certain context, a certain time, and a certain space. How? So there's no objective and timeless knowledge as came by realists. And then there's no simple separation between facts and values. All these kind of theories, there's some purpose. The biggest criticism of him is on neoliberalism. Neoliberalism, if you forget what is neoliberalism, then go back to the radio clips. Recall it from watching the radio clips again. neoliberalism, in fact, is a theory that is heavily being criticized by him. Liberalism, it pretends to be a very objective and a timeless theory. Objective because, okay, you objectively observe that state must strive for its own survival. And also, it pretends to be objective to say that, okay, all states are rational. It's timeless because whatever time, whatever place, all states are rationally strive for their survival. For course, it's just to reinforce and legitimate the status quo. That is, legitimates the great power politics. That is, a status quo that the great power can use the excuse of maintaining survival to exploit small states. And this theory reinforces the ruling hegemony of current world order, a legitimate and unjust international order. What is that unjust international order? In fact, of course, his main criticism is on neoliberalism, but as I mentioned when I talk about neoliberalism and neoliberalism, they are two brothers. Course, criticize neoliberalism. Realism, on the other hand, is also criticize neoliberalism. The hegemonic theory, that theory also strongly proposed by neoliberalism, is free trade. This free trade, in fact, benefits. This high idea is free trade. In fact, free trade benefits the rich instead of the poor. The biggest state benefits from the state enjoy the biggest fruits from this hegemonic idea that is free trade is USA. USA benefits a lot from free trade, and it also establish some institutions like IMF and World Trade Organization to consolidate this idea. In fact, this idea benefits US the most, but peripheral states suffer a lot. The very good example is the Asian financial crisis. The Asian financial crisis, the reason of the outbreak is because IMF, International Monetary Fund, I will talk about this later, encourage Asian states to open its stock markets. However, because of the size of the stock market as well as some defects in the internal financial system, so this kind of or we can say developing markets in Asia is easy to be collapsed if they are under attack from those people like Soros, or hedge fund managers who very skillfully sought the currency and also the market of these states. Then, because of his attack, so the currencies of these countries collapse. This East Asian state collapse rapidly within 1 year. Depreciation, some like Indonesia depreciation by 80%, Thai depreciation by 40%. Heavy depreciation of values, of currency values, and also its GDP also heavily declines. Like Thai, its GDP declines by 20%, Korea declines by near 20%, and half of the Indonesian GDP lost during the crisis. In fact, this crisis, the reason is because the IMF allowed this kind of, we can say, 大鱷 crocodiles, financial crocodiles, to use so-called financial methods, 財技, to earn money by shorting, 沽空, shares and sorting some currencies. In fact, sorting is a method that you earn money from making others suffer. But this is not a moral method to earn money. However, I am allowed to do so under the name of free trade, under the name of free flow of currency, free flow of monetary investment. So, because of this free flow of trade, free flow of monetary investment, a lot of people suffer. But the winner is Soros and also many Americans. This is a very good example of how the hegemonic idea benefits you as those core states at the expense of peripheral states. Okay, we'll finish Marxism here, and next time we'll talk about constructivism.